Boys, welcome to the podcast. I got a couple of questions for you straight up. Ready?
Wow, quick
Rapid
fire. Go,
Coke
go.
Zero, Coke Zero, or Pepsi Max?
Coke Zero.
Go zero.
Coke Zero. Burrito or kebab?
Burrito. I've never had a kebab, so
Wow.
yeah, I know.
What about a suvo? Have you had like a suvo?
Never.
Oh my God.
Oh, no. All right. So
I probably can't really answer because I don't really know what that tastes. I assume it's pretty fucking good, but
if you had if you had said burrito or suvo, I would have said suvo, but you fucking.
I've never had one.
I'm going to go.
Okay. Kebab or suvo? What would you
Yeah.
go?
Suvo.
Suvo, same. Okay, so then burrito and suvo.
Suvo.
Yeah, suvo for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
So
Well,
kebab.
Scotty, you got to come with us to get a suvo.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
man,
go
take me. But can they do me?
Take me.
Can they do a gluten-free one?
Gluten. We'll
Oh,
find a place. We'll find a
Yeah,
place.
or Scotty just has the meat, like the meat in the box. You know what I mean? With
Yeah,
the,
you've
with
got to
with
have the meat
chips.
at least. That's
Being a glutard's hard, you know.
No, we got you. We got you. No,
we
we'll
got
work
you.
it out.
Okay, last one. Breakfast or dinner?
Dinner.
Really?
Yeah, 100%. I've been despising breakfast lately, man, to be honest.
I'm a breakfast person.
Yeah, I wonder if that'll change. I wonder if that'll change for you the further
Yeah,
away from
in
prep
6
you get,
months
man.
time, bro, it won't be. You'd be like,
Yeah, I swear, I used to wake up and absolutely froth it. My last meal at the moment is so big that when I wake up at 4:30 to go to work, that bowl of oats is painful, man.
you got to start drinking it, man.
Oh, it's brutal.
You know what I think it is? I think because breakfast comes with a coffee, and I love coffee.
Yeah.
No, you know what it is? It's because you're not fucking racing off to the gym at 5 a.m. You're fucking chilling in that beautiful kitchen behind you.
True.
That's
Relaxing.
that's all.
Sun's coming in.
Fucking, you got those beautiful city views over there in Essendon.
Yeah,
You just fucking take your time.
True. True. All right, boys. So, the Christmas gym catch up is this Sunday.
Oh man, I'm pumped.
And I don't, have you seen? Because I was like, I wanted to post a photo of the gym, and when I was looking at photos, I was like, the equipment is pretty freaking epic. Like it's
It is, man.
pretty
It looks
good.
sick. Everything's epic, man. Like I got a couple of my girls in my team who train there, and there's this like place that they take a selfie. It might be the female bathroom because the powerhouse sign is in pink in the background, but it looks fucking elite, man. It looks awesome.
But we did have one question said, is this Christmas catch up a sober training meet, or is it an actual party?
I can guarantee you that fucking 11 a.m. on a Sunday is fucking going to be the most sober meet you've ever been to in your life. Unless anyone wants to bring, because everyone's been amazing when we ask these questions. Someone brings Scott a gluten-free suva.
Could you imagine him trying
Someone
to
brings
leg press or squat?
100%. Bring him a gluten-free suva.
He's just down to
Well,
sugar.
I'll have to do some due diligence. See if I'm sure there'd be somewhere out there that does it.
All right, I've got another question about this meetup because I've had this question asked to me heaps.
Okay, go.
It's like, are you guys doing your own thing, or are you gonna like just jump in a little bit with everyone that comes and like catches up with you and stuff? And I said, no, I'll do a set with every different person that's there.
Yeah, so I'm tackling it like I'm going to do all my 5 days of training before I go, and that's just going to be a free fun day. Yeah. So
What
I'm
about you,
just going
Scott?
to jump in with whatever we
Yeah.
want to do.
I'm doing the same thing, but I typically am normally a little bit sore in my back on a Sunday, so I want to kind of use it as a bit of a flush sesh. The only things I probably won't be doing is legs because I got legs this Saturday and they'll be really sore.
Yeah. Cool. So
Although if we were going to train there like properly trained earlier, I'd love to do legs there, and because I've never been there, but I reckon it would be like when we went to World Gym at what was it called? What was it?
Mount Gravatt?
Stafford.
Oh, Stafford.
Stafford.
Yeah.
I remember I walked in there and I was like, fuck, I want to go over here. I want to go over there. Like it had everything. And I'm guessing what Bayswater will be like.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
it's going to be epic. The equipment is epic.
You need a half an hour walk around just to like find your bearings and work out what's what. Otherwise you end up doing like 40 sets.
Everyone that I've spoken to is like, I'm going to get there a bit early. I'm going to get there a bit early. I'm going to get there a bit early. So we're all going to be there early. It's going to be awesome.
It's going to be awesome. I cannot wait. It's going to be real good.
I just also want just one more thing, man.
Yep.
What's Friday this week? Look at that big smile. Yes, I got you guys. It is MT's birthday this week.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, so we're actually it's the Prep Coach podcast meetup and MT's birthday celebration, but it's still going to be sober.
Yeah. My birthday Friday. So, yeah, another year older, another year done.
Another year wiser, another year stronger.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get into some questions. There's a couple of questions that were asked that we covered in previous podcasts, so I'm just going to quickly rattle those off and tell you where to find them. One was about relationships and her partner understanding what they're going through and having a balance. So look at episode 5, 12, and 13. We go over relationships and support systems and how to tackle that. So have a look at those. Another question was about vegans and building muscle and prepping as a vegan. And that was covered in episode 17, the last topic that we covered. Okay, this is going to be a good one to start with. So can mums succeed in the sport? Now, I know we've got a lot of great examples. MG, give us the latest and greatest success story this year.
Man, can mums succeed in the sport? Man, I feel like mums are more likely to succeed in the sport. I'll tell you my opinion on mums. Mums are amazing because they have this ability to just get shit done, right? And I'm a big advocate for, like, you know, that saying, like, you want something done, give it to the busiest person in the room because they'll just find a way to fit something else in, right? Whereas those that don't have as much on find more excuses to get things done. Mums are just fit into that category. They don't have time to piss fart around. They typically have to be far more scheduled with everything because they've got, you know, and Scott will attest to this as a dad, you know, you got kids events, you got sporting, you got birthday parties. So, like, if you want to train, you probably got to pencil it in. And that type of decision-making and lifestyle actually feeds nicely into this sport. But I mean, you know, some of my most successful athletes have definitely been mums. I mean, look at this season, Elise alone, right? Look at Elise, 2 kids, 1 in prep, Maddie's 3, brings her to the gym every day, gets her workout done, non-negotiable, cooks different meals for the kids than to herself because that's just the way it works. So I would say that mums are freaking incredible, and some of the best athletes I know are mums. And I'll also go as far as saying this, is that some of the best athletes that I have that haven't had the success they deserve from a judging perspective, but give the most in terms of work ethic and adherence, are also mums. Yeah. And I like to celebrate those athletes as well, because I see some mums, and I know MT, you got a couple as well who I know as well, who've like got every reason to like go off plan or not make shit work, 3 kids, 4 kids, and they're the ones that tend to like really, really deliver. So I just want to give my appreciation to all mums who live this lifestyle. Well done, keep going. You guys are seriously inspirational. And yes, mums can freaking be successful.
Yeah, for all those reasons that you mentioned, plus, you know, mums give so much to everyone else, so they're really determined to do something for themselves.
Yeah, good point.
It's like a massive driving force to be like, okay, no, this is for me. So along with everything that you said, that's another factor that really pushes mums to succeed. But yeah, we have awesome success stories. Like, you know, Candace last year, you know, she's got 3 kids. And she got 4 pro cards last year over 3 federations, like absolutely crazy. You got Bridget, who is a 2-time ICM pro, plus she's won a pro show too. So that's Bridget, and some other success stories. I had Melinda Wood back in the day, first ever show, and only coached her for like 9 months, and she took out the all-female classic in the fitness division and got runner-up in sports. So she took the whole thing out. There's so many along the way. So yeah, mums can definitely succeed. If anything, they're probably the ones that do the best out of most people because of all those factors we just mentioned. And you've got some successful ones, like you had Amanda Powell this year, Scotty.
Yeah, man. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Amanda, and her conditioning was phenomenal. Everything that MG said, I completely concur with. It's definitely not it shouldn't hinder anyone from deciding whether they do or don't compete. You know, it's just one of those things. It's like, if as long as you've got air in your lungs, if you determine, you prioritize it, it's important to you as a goal, then absolutely no one else should tell you otherwise.
Yeah. I think MT, I think you actually raised a really good point there, man. That, you know, maybe it's been like a journey where, you know, you've been pregnant, there's 9 months, that first kind of year of the child's life is like super dedicated to, you know, setting the foundation for becoming a great parent. So for some of these mums, potentially 2-3 years have passed where they've really given their heart and soul to everyone else. And then, you know, that motivation to like, okay, this is my opportunity is maybe what gives them that extra drive.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I think also as well, because and this is speaking from a parent perspective, when you do take time out of your life and your schedule, be it as a parent, like to be away from your family and your kids, you know how important that time is and it's valuable. So you don't have time to fuck around and waste time on exercise and talk to whoever. When you're in there, you mean business. If you're going to do something like it's a costly endeavor, both time and financial. So I think for a lot of people, it's like you need to make sure that you're giving everything, and that tends to be what happens. At least I know, you know, seeing Amanda go through it, and as you mentioned, MT, you know, you look at Candice and Bridge, and obviously I saw Elise firsthand, UMG up in Queensland. Like it's very, very different to the 21-year-old who lives at home with mum and dad, works part-time, and can just go about it. Yeah. That's why when we look in on it, that we have such a greater appreciation and respect for what it takes to do that, because it's like, I mean, I know firsthand what goes on behind the scenes to allow all of that to take place. So I think that's why as well, there's just such a, I guess, intensity around the whole process, because it's like, this is what I'm sacrificing. So I need to make sure if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it wholeheartedly.
Yeah. I think the other thing about this in another potty about sacrifice, and that obviously parents and mums, they've gone through some hard times, had to push through and had to sacrifice. So they're not like, you know, someone that's maybe had a cushy job, always been given everything in their life and never really had to sacrifice. And now they're going to a prep where they have to sacrifice, they have to go without. Can be a bit tough, where a mum has done a lot of sacrificing and pushed through a lot of hard times. So going through a prep is not the hardest thing they've ever done in their life.
Yeah, I also find you would agree with, like, I'm sure you boys see this, don't a lot of the up and coming mums who want to compete for the first time, when you mention, you know, some amazing, incredible athletes that are mums that you coach, they always already follow them, and typically they've already reached out to them in some way and have gotten a response. So I find that, you know, that extra level of maturity, which comes with obviously being on the earth for a little bit longer, they tend to give that support back to the next group of mums who want to compete, which is awesome as well. Great for the sport.
Yeah. Okay. I want to cover off 2 questions that was asked by someone directly to the Prep Coach Podcast Instagram page that we didn't cover off last week, but they're really good ones. They're a little bit long-winded, so I'm just going to shorten them out. But one was about banking steps. So say you had to do, 15,000 steps every day, but on some days you do 20, and other days you do 10. Can you bank them? As long as the weekly average is the same, can you bank your steps and catch up if you need to later in the week, or on days when you're less busy and days that you are more busy and you can't get all the steps in because from a time constraint perspective. Scotty, you want to start on that?
Yeah, sure. I think, again, it's context dependent. If you're talking about, say your step target's 12,000, and then on a couple of days you only get 10 or 11, and then you get 13 or 14 for 1 or 2. But if you're talking about someone who's, say they're doing like 15,000, and then one day they do 22, so that the next day they can do 6 or 7, then I think that can be deleterious to both the athlete and the prep, because when you're in the dieting condition, as we know, give a little, take a little. If you take too much from one side of the fence, there's always going to be recoil. And obviously every decision that you make is going to have, essentially there's going to be an opposite reaction. So let's say, for example, that you train legs on a Tuesday, and you know that you've got a really busy Tuesday morning, you're not going to have time to do steps, and your step count's 15,000, but you decide to do 22,000 on Monday so that you can take it easier on the Tuesday. There's a good chance that you're going to have tired, potentially fatigued legs. You're also going to increase the magnitude of the deficit. So you've potentially got lower, if not any, muscle glycogen stored when you go into that session, which is something that we want to be in a lower muscle glycogen state so that we can liberate more fat. But if you're just completely taxed, then the quality of that workout's going to be shit. And then if the quality of that workout is shit, we know that strength training is one of our important pieces to be able to retain tissue when we're in the dieting condition. So if it's an ongoing thing, it can be a problem. But if it's like, say you got a family event on all day Saturday and you just didn't have time to get your steps and then you fall 8,000 short, rather than just doing 8,000 the next day, I'd be like, well, why don't you split those up into, say, lots of 2 or 3 and do it over 2 or 3 days? That can be a better alternative. But if we're talking about extremes of like upwards of more than 5,000 on one day, then I think you'll definitely see some recoil as a result of that. And also typically, if it's just on a day-to-day basis, the biggest thing that we want as coaches from our athletes is just consistency, because when we're looking in at their quantitative data in the spreadsheet, if all of those metrics are consistent, it allows us to view that through a lot clearer lens versus if one day I had 4 hours and then their weigh-in is not existent and they did no steps on one day and they did heap on the other, then it just zigzags and you don't really have any sort of fluency to kind of understand how the week went. So if it's here or there and randomly, I don't think it's a big deal. But again, my only recommendation and advice would be to, if it is like a gap of more than even like 4,000, I wouldn't do that all in one day. I'd split it up into lots of 2 and then try and go about it that way.
Yeah, so we want to consistently manage the deficit because, yeah, it's energy out, right? So steps is energy out. So if one day you have more out than another, it's obviously going to have a different deficit. So we want to be consistent with that, obviously. Then we talked about recovery, because if you're doing more steps, you're not going to be as recovered if you're doing on the days you do less. But also too, and we don't want any extremes. Like if it's 1,000 up one day, 1,000 up the next day, like it's okay. It's as long as there's no extremes in either direction. But I would say work with your coach if you know there's always a day where you're going to be under your steps. Like Monday's your busiest work day and you're never, ever going to be able to get your 12K. You can only ever do 8. And at least your coach can then maybe manage your food and your calories for that day and say, okay, cool. So we'll drop them a little bit lower on that day because you're going to have less output. And then you said that on a Wednesday is your day off. We know we can catch up. So we'll give you a little bit more food. So make sure the deficit is the same across the days and make it consistent, because then the coach can see what's going to happen every week and they can consistently manage the data and manage any fluctuations. If you just haphazardly always trying to catch up here and there and steps are all over the joint every day of the week and it's always different every day of the week, you just got no consistency, and we just can't manage what adjustments we need to make because we're not sitting on a consistent and really stable foundation of which to build off. What do you reckon, MG? I know you see this sometimes with some of your tradie clients too, hey?
Yeah, definitely, man. That's what, man, I was going to touch on it, but you nailed it. It's just like it's all about communication, and the sooner we know about it, the sooner we can kind of plan for it. And then, I'm not looking at the data week to week, scratching my head, wondering why, things are changing too fast or not changing at all, because I'm having a full understanding of what's happening circumstantially with the client day to day. But man, we know like progression, particularly like, when dieting, is just about ticking boxes, right? So I like to say steps hit every single day. And, consistency really is key. And if, as you guys said, little bits of discrepancies day to day don't really matter. But I ask for them to be ticked every day, man. So I like to see steps hit every single day. It's just a good feeling, man. Like at the end of the day, we're just trying to accumulate all these little victories along the way to add up to this massive extreme end goal of looking like, a freak on stage. And I'll tell you what, it feels freaking good to know that you get to your show and you got every day. You didn't leave any stone unturned. Everything was done correctly. It's just a nice feeling. So I try and get everyone to achieve it.
Yeah.
Doesn't always happen, but.
Yeah. So that person also asked another question about they're doing a mini cut before they start their comp prep phase. So, obviously a mini cut is more of an extreme deficit. And then they said they're going to move into their comp prep and the calories are going to be brought up, but the coach ensures them that they're still going to be losing weight, losing fat, right? How is this so if the calories are being brought up? Now, look, I'm going to give you the simple answer is if you're still going to be losing weight, you're still in a deficit. Maybe the deficit is not as big as what the mini cut was. And as you move into the prep, the deficit is smaller. So the calories are brought up from where your mini cut calories were. But you're obviously still in a deficit if you're going to lose. So I don't think we really need to talk too much about that, to be honest, because that just explains the reason why. But I probably want to talk about why you would do a mini cut before a comp prep. So I'm going to lead to you again, Scotty, because I know we've spoken about, and even with your preppers, there's like the gaintaining phase, right? Or the maintenance phase before you start a prep. And because essentially what they're doing is they're just having a really, really long fat loss phase. Maybe like you can call it a mini cut, but it's basically an aggressive start to the prep. And then it sounds like they're not going as aggressive for the rest of the prep. And maybe they will later on. Depends how good the prep goes. But why would you not do a mini cut before you start a prep?
Well, I think when you're in a contest prep, when you start anyway, again, I know how I run mine, and I'm pretty sure you boys are very similar in your approach. Typically, the start will be more aggressive because we have enough fat mass to be aggressive without it being detrimental, and we're in a position to be able to do that. But I think for me, one of the concerns would be, let's say you're doing a 24-week contest prep and you decide to do a 6-week mini cut. Some people do, like you did a 30-plus week prep, which is fine, but then you're in a deficit from the start. It's not really any different. But I think if you are too aggressive initially, yeah, you will see some fat loss, which is great, but you'll also, depending how aggressive you are, you may also see some metabolic adaptation, which early on can be problematic because if you experience that too early on, granted, if you're talking about someone who's on 3,000 calories, they're going to go to 2,000, they're going to come back up to say 2,300, then if it's over 4 weeks, you're probably going to be all right. But typically, if you pull too much too early, then again, you're taking from the system when you probably didn't need to be that aggressive initially. Whereas I think if you adopt an approach, I'm probably a little bit more biased because this is how I do it, and I'm actually just concluding mine this week. But the advantage of running a pre-preparatory phase, a pre-prep phase, which we've spoken about, is a lengthier phase than a mini cut. A mini cut, you want to get in, get out, whereas the point of a pre-prep phase is to get your physique to a point and even start to, get into some of those habits that you would when you're in a contest prep where it's like, oh, there's a little bit of my son's dinner left on his plate. I'm not going to waste it. I'll just eat it. If I was in a mini cut, rather than wasting it, I'd probably just eat it and allow for it versus when I'm in a pre-prep phase, I'm literally a meal plan that I've prescribed and I'm going to stick to. That's what I'm eating and it doesn't deviate. And someone said, you go to a Christmas function on the Sunday, you're going to have some of that. No, I've already got my own food. It's all good. So it's getting into those really, I guess, just strict habits that you would when you're in a prep, but that also allows you to get rid of a larger amount of that fat mass so that you're within pretty, reasonable striking distance to, if you had 10 weeks, you could really push and maybe even get close to 12 weeks to get on stage. But then you're going to enter that gaintaining phase that we spoke about. So what that means is that if I use myself as an example, instead of me when I was at my peak around 104, 105 in the improvement season, trying to diet down to say 84, 85, 20 kilos is just too much versus now being 93, 93.2, or hopefully 92 and a half by the end of the week. That means that if I anticipate that I'm going to be on stage in that 80, like around 84 mark, only having to lose 8 kilos from here, it wouldn't be that bad. But obviously I know that there'll be some increase between now and March when prep starts, but I've built that into the timeline. So if I only have to lose 11 kilograms instead of losing 20, it's a big difference. It means that I can be aggressive still at the start and then go a lot slower and then obviously preserve energy availability so I can still train harder, retain more lean mass. But also it allows that window of time, like say from now until when I start prep, to start to restore some of that metabolic adaptation that's occurred. Because once upon a time I was eating 5,000 calories and I wasn't able to lose weight, whereas now my food's down to 2,600 calories. and I am losing weight, but I'm not losing a kilo a week anymore. It's more like 600, 700 grams. So metabolic adaptation is a real thing, and as you start to get leaner, you will succumb to that. But I'll have enough time to slowly bring food back up, whilst obviously keeping body composition at a reasonable level, so that when I start prep, energy availability is high. So if maintenance calories are back in that 4,000 plus range, and I've only got 11 kilos to lose or 10 kilos to lose, I'm setting myself up for a pretty nice contest prep. And all of my season B guys are exactly the same.
Yeah.
So I think that system just works. Again, my opinion, I think it works a little bit better, and I think it's better for the athlete as well, because you can get a large chunk of fat mass off. And it also, I use it almost as a bit of a screening process. 3 years between being on stage, where do I reckon my stage weight is going to be? And when you get down to a point where, you're reasonably lean, like you've got some really good detail, you can pretty much tell, I reckon this is where we're going to land. So based on that, now we've got a range, give or take, say maybe 500 grams a kilo. We just reverse engineer from there. And this is how much we're going to have to lose. So if we're starting at this point, that much fat mass by that many weeks, factor in diet breaks, you do the math on it all. And it really is quite simplistic.
Yeah. I think you nailed it, Scotty. Have you got anything to add, MG?
No, I like that strategy better. I think what a lot of people are doing is like running that prep and then straight into the prep. Whereas I'll definitely like that strategy that Scott explained, where you kind of do a tidy up and you still leave yourself plenty of time to rebuild food back up. And like you said, you may have allowed for 3 or 4 kilos to increase on the way up, but you've already tidied 10 off. It's just gonna prove to be a much better prep. You may be able to now, have a diet break along the way and these types of things because you've done the right thing. And I think that all comes down to like the amount of time you spend with your coach. The longer that your coach coaches you, the more opportunity you're going to have to learn and do things like this, versus people who kind of just start with a coach and it's like, okay, I want to go straight into prep. How far away is the show? Oh, it's 24 weeks. Well, we don't really know anything about your metabolism. So I think longer is always better.
Yeah, it's so common. Like, how common do we get inquiries like, oh, I want to do season A? That's like 25 weeks away. Not a lot of time to do a lot of things.
Sure. And it's like I'm already not eating a lot. It's like I want to compete in season A. If you say, okay, I've been tracking my food and I'm eating 3,500 calories as a 60-kilo female, it's like, fucking all right, beautiful. No stress, we can do this. But how common is that? It's rare. It's like I've been eating 1,400 calories. Well, we're probably going to run out of rope pretty quickly. So
yeah, and it's that's just about education. There's nothing wrong. Like they don't know any better. They don't know how to plan a prep out. But it's setting that expectation when someone does inquire with you and say, okay, let me run you through how you would plan for a show and all the phases you need to go through to make sure you're successful. And I don't know, this happens to me sometimes, is I'll have that conversation and that person will be like, no, I want to do it sooner. And be like, well, it's not how I would do it. And I'm really committed to getting the best out of you and out of all my athletes. And then they'll go to another coach, and then I'll come back to you later.
Yeah, I've had and again, I always just say, anyone that perhaps tells you otherwise doesn't have your best interests at heart, and is probably just making money. Yeah. So I think if anyone that's competing or thinking, especially if you're a first timer, I think as well, that's even more advantageous for you because, again, we're not talking about a 6-week mini cut, and this is where some people perhaps, if you don't actually properly pull off what you need to pull off, like it's not just, if you say it's a female, one of my girls, say she's 65 when she started this, and she's going to be on stage realistically at say 51 kilos, 14 kilos, we're going to pull off probably half of what she needs to, because otherwise, if you only pull off 2 or 3 kilos, she's going to start in the same place and you're just wasting time. So there's that as well. And for a first timer, it gives them a taste of this is what you can expect. And as a coach, it allows you to learn about your athlete for the first time too, because you can guarantee they're going to make mistakes first time around in the prep. At least they make those basic mistakes or whatever they are in that pre-prep phase. You can attenuate that when you start prep, and perhaps there's things that both of you learn about each other that you can get the system bulletproof. So when you start, you're setting them up for success.
Yeah, definitely. Let's change the pace a little bit and let's talk about training. So, how many sets do you normally give per exercise? My coach has given me 7 plus, or sometimes even more on some exercises.
7 exercises or 7 sets?
7 sets.
I think it said
on
7 sets.
exercise. Yeah. MG, you want to tackle this one to start with?
Yeah, man. I'll say I don't think I've ever prescribed anyone by choice, 7 sets on an exercise for a couple of reasons. First one being effectiveness. I'll tell you where I have used a high amount of sets. It's been on someone who has had an injury or some exercise that they couldn't do, and I've had to make, like, I'm a perfect example. I had my knee operation, couldn't squat, couldn't leg press. So, Scott, we did 6 or 7 sets of leg extensions, right? Because we're just trying to get a bit of extra quad volume through. Again, that's not by choice. That's the only way we were able to get that volume through the quads. But if you're being programmed, 7 plus sets on some reasonably big compound movements like presses, squats, it's just not how I would ever do things. I just don't think it's effective. I don't think that your ability to continually give 100% and overload past 5 sets is really going to be there. So, me typically, a workout for me might be anywhere from 6 to 8 exercises, averaging 3 to 4 sets on most things. Some things with 2, if there's a single arm or a single leg movement that is a bit time consuming, or I want to isolate one part of the body specifically, I might use 2 sets, but 3 to 4 on everything's pretty common for me, man. At the end of the day, I'm calculating total volume for the week and what I'm trying to put into each muscle group or each part of the body. And maybe we can do an episode specifically on that, what we aim for as coaches into certain muscle groups. But again, it's definitely athlete specific depending on the person's physique. But I mean, if you're doing 3 or 4 exercises at 7 plus sets and you're doing 5 or 6 exercises, if you're training in the 35 to 40 sets range, personally, I think it's just too much, and I think it's a waste, and I think it's, what do they call it? Junk volume. I think there's a certain point at which all you're doing is making yourself tired. You are bringing down your inability to recover. You're also taking away your ability to overload, and you're just wasting a shitload of your time.
Yeah. What about you, Scotty?
I completely agree.
You sound like really disappointed and upset that someone would actually do that.
Yeah.
You're holding back. I can see you're holding back your anger.
Nah, I'm not angry. It's just, I guess, this sort of shit shouldn't be, it should be a bit better than that by now. But I think this is the thing now. There's enough education around there as to why that is. I think if you're an athlete and perhaps something doesn't quite add up compared to what you're listening to, you're hearing to, then I think you should always ask the question. And if this is something I always used to tell my uni students when I used to lecture, is that periodization 101, there must always be a reasoning behind why you're programming or why you're doing what you're doing. If you're not, then why are you doing it? Someone says to me, oh, why have we got this in there for that? And I'm like, oh, just cause. Well, then there's no reason for that to be there. But if it's got purpose, if it's there for a specific reason and that you can explain as to why it's there, then for sure. But to this very day, if I'm going through something and I'm adding up total volume, does this need to be there? Yes, it does. No, it doesn't. And if I can't justify why it should be there, then it won't go in there. So I can't rationally think about why would I want to get someone to do 7 sets on a hack squat. Like, the stimulus to fatigue ratio is off the charts. Especially if they're performing, for me, even like on a big compound, like 3 sets max, maybe one of them's or 2 of them are top sets and maybe 1 back offset where you're going to 1 in reserve. And even then, like, that would probably be the only major big compound, something like that, because the neural fatigue that would accumulate with that is going to mean that everything else is probably going to be shit. So then it might be like a leg extension or, something that's a lot less taxing, especially if you've got someone in the dieting condition. Like, you're just running them into the ground unnecessarily.
Yeah.
But yeah,
walking out of the gym,
just have alarm bells like that. I think you should just call it and just ask why.
Yeah. Walking out of the gym absolutely cooked and tired is not the best indication that that was an amazing workout. Like, relate it back to your goal. If your workout is to walk, if your goal is purely to walk out of the gym cooked and tired and you don't have a specific hypertrophy goal, go nuts. 40, 45, 50, go to 60 sets. Who cares? But what I'm saying is, if your goal is specific, you've got a show coming up and you're trying to retain, build muscle tissue, there's plenty of literature out there that shows that, you know, people working in that range of, you know, 18 to 30 sets are getting the same results as, or potentially better results than people going silly and doing 40 and 50 sets per session. It's just not needed.
Yeah, and people, I mean, I had one of my athletes a little while ago asking for rear delt specific, in a dieting condition, asking for rear delt work on top of, he's got horizontal pulling movements in there. And obviously the posterior delt's not a large muscle, but also on most majority of horizontal pulling based movements, it's going to be assisting, it's going to be contributing, especially when one of them's an incline row, and saying, oh, I think we need to be getting more like 4 or 5 at least specific sets for that. And I was like, no, we don't, because like, why? What's the point of that? It's just junk volume. Oh, I feel like I want to bring up that area. Well, you're not going to bring up that area when you're in a deficit, man. Like when you're dieting, it's just not going to happen. So I think even with things like that, you know, getting someone out of their own way, and that's not getting them to do 7 sets. That's not having a specific like rear delt exercise. If a certain muscle group is being ticked off across other movements, it's getting enough volume toward it. That's where like, even some people are like, oh, I feel like I need more bicep work. If they've got 2 sets of biceps, if they've got 2 exercises of biceps, say 2 sets for each, you know, I've only got 4 sets, but you might have 16 pulling based sets that you're doing as well, where the biceps also being engaged in that. And again, if you've got less of something, then it should place more emphasis on the quality that needs to be there for it. If I've got 4 sets of bicep curls, I want to make sure that every single rep I'm robbing it for all it's worth. Because otherwise, if you're just going through the motion, then you're not getting anything out of that set anyway. So that's why I think some people just think that more is better, versus I'm a big believer in quality over quantity. Rather than doing 8 or 10 sets of some certain, whatever it is, the movement you want to do, you're doing less of it and really hone in on it and make sure that you're getting every single bit that you can out of it, then essentially you more than likely, nearly always, you'll get a better result than if you're doing shitloads of something, because the quality is there. And when you start to focus on the quality of a quantity, that's what we want. Essentially, as a natural, you want to be able to get the very most out of doing the very least.
For sure.
Both when you're trying to build muscle and when you're trying to obviously lose fat.
And you need to think like, what can you recover from? What is your body actually able to recover from?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're like, I saw recently a pull day for a female who's, say, a bikini or a sports model, who had 5 pull exercises and 2 bicep exercises, a single arm dumbbell and a cable rope hammer curl, both with 4 sets on each at the end of the workout. So 8 sets post 5 pulling exercises. So you just don't need 8 sets on. And then there was 4 extra sets of biceps on a full body day that was later on in the week.
Yeah. I like to do it this way. I like to think of, there's some boundaries that you just don't go outside of whenever you build a program, right? So I like to put it this way. It's like, okay, well, I've got to make sure everything fits within this bubble. Okay, my bubble is I'm going to train 5 days a week, an hour every session, and in that session, I can pretty much get around about 30 sets of stuff done, right? That's like 7 or 8 exercises, 3 to 4 sets per. That's my bubble. All right, now I've got my bubble, my boundary. I can't go out without that. What can I fit inside that? The next bubble is, within an exercise, what's really effective? I'm not going to go outside of the 3, 4 to 5 sets for that one exercise. Anything outside of that, lower or higher than that, is just not going to be effective. So we start to set these boundaries of where you should be, how you should be doing things. Anything outside of that is not going to be effective or not practical. So there, we start to fit things in. Okay, so I've got 5 days. In one day, one training session, I've got to do 30 sets. That's my capacity, right? It's going to be, what muscles do I need to work on the most? Now, you can't say, all right, I've got to bring up every single muscle in my body. The amount of effective sets to bring up every single muscle in your body is not going to fit within those bubbles. It's just not. And that's why you have programs dedicated to more body parts than another. This program, we're going to work on glutes, quads, and shoulders. Next program is going to work on glutes, hams, and back. You can't say I'm going to work on every single muscle group effectively and bring them all up. You just don't have enough time, volume, and recovery capacity, right? And it sounds like maybe some coaches are trying to do everything all at once, and it's just not effective. And they're just throwing sets and sets and sets at every single muscle group, at every single movement pattern, and the person's in there for hours. They're not recovering, and it's just not effective. Now, if someone needs to do 8 sets on a hack squat, why not do it over 2 days? Why not do it, on day 1 and day 3? They need to do 8 sets, right? Or if they need to do 8 sets of quads, why do it all of hack squat? Why not do some hack squat, some leg press, some kind of lunge, some kind of other variations, some kind of step up? So trying to throw all your volume at one movement pattern too is not effective either. So I think when we think of programming and exercise and workouts, have your boundaries that you shouldn't go outside of, and stick within those practical, effective boundaries. And that's how you should create your program and your workout. And if your coach is going outside of those practical, effective boundaries, question it. Definitely be questioning it.
Yeah, well said. It's like if I take it back to like that example when I was injured and I was doing 6 or 7 sets on leg extension, they were effective because I wasn't doing anything else.
Yeah.
So it was really easy to keep those effective because I didn't have any energy that I needed to disperse elsewhere. But if I had to do that, plus leg press, plus hack squat, plus Smith squat, it just wouldn't have been possible.
Yeah, definitely not. All right. I think we covered it, boys. On the same vein, so we're talking about training. My coach is getting me to do a lot of fancy exercises, like the ones you see on Instagram. How many fancy exercises do you put in your programs? Are they effective?
MG,
you starting again?
Yeah, I just look at Scott's face because I know that a lot of this, like obviously a lot of the stuff that kind of we do and see is similar. I would say, man, I don't think I use one single fancy exercise in any of my days. Like, particularly not lower body stuff, man. I tend to just use the stuff that I know work, that's been around forever. And I know that my athletes get great mind-muscle connection, that, they don't have to take 10 minutes setting it up, annoying everyone in the gym around them because they're trying to cross-strap cables on this ankle and that leg and then supersetting it with something else, running from one side of the gym to the other. Personally, I'm not a user of fancy social media exercises. I feel like a lot of the time I watch these stories, I think to myself, I wonder how much mind-muscle connection the people utilizing these are getting. But I also understand that it looks fun and it looks pretty for Instagram. And when you're trying to build a following or, show that you're knowledgeable in the industry, to come up with something fancy is a very good way of doing that. But I don't necessarily think that these exercises are the best way to progress a muscle. That's my opinion. I don't use any of them, man.
Yeah, I can pretty much tell you that the Instagram person that you're watching do those fancy exercises, they didn't build that muscle doing that fancy exercise.
100%.
They didn't. There's no way, right? But I think there is some good exercises out there. We're seeing some good variations of some new things, and people are doing studies and EMG testing on some. So I think there's some good stuff out there that I know all three of us have been utilizing, but there's some stuff that's absolutely rubbish that would require way too much setup time. It's not very good gym etiquette. It's probably uncomfortable visibly for some females to even execute them in front of people, if you know what I mean by that. And then some of them are just impractical. Like, you would need someone to help you with the exercise, either set it up or put the weight in place or the band in place or the equipment in place while you're doing the exercise. And sometimes you are trying to train a muscle, but you have other muscle groups that are going to be your limiting factor. So I know we've kind of spoken about this, boys, where it's like doing a reverse lunge with the landmine bar on your shoulder, and you're a female is having to lift up this weight off the floor, put it on their shoulder to then do a lunge. and train their lower body effectively, where they have to use their upper body strength and support to train their lower body. Like, I don't think that there's going to be many people out there that can where their upper body is going to be their limiting factor to train their lower body. So there's some exercises that look great, but they're just not practical, or they're just not going to be effective. You effectively can't overload the muscle you want because other muscles are going to be a limiting factor. So, yeah, we don't use the fancy stuff for those reasons, but there's definitely some exercises out there that are posted on social media that have some good research or some good practicality to them, and I test them out myself, and I think to myself, yep, this is pretty good. I'm gonna add this into my programming. So, Scotty, do you want to have your piece on this? I know you love it. No, you don't want to have your piece on it.
You guys have covered it. I'll just be reinforcing what you've already said.
But just with a little more rage, that's all.
All right. Another one that we got asked was about if in the off season, if they are seeing glute gains or they're just getting fat. Right now, this is an interesting one because, and we're going to talk about Instagram in a second. I think there's some people out there that have a really Instagrammable physique, and what I mean by that is they hold their body fat in their glutes and no body fat on their midsection, right? So they can wear the leggings, they can wear the shorts, they have a nice flat abs and flat stomach and these massively aesthetic glutes. But it's probably because that's where they distribute their body fat. So, and then you'll see them doing these fancy exercises and selling stuff, right? So I think people need to be wary of whether they're true glute gains or whether they have just their fat distributes in that area. And I know I have clients that are like that. They have Instagrammable bodies. They have, nice flat abs, not a lot of body fat on their abs, and all their body fat goes to their glutes. And it's great. It's great for a gym selfie, but it can mislead you sometimes. And then you see some of these girls, and I always say, watch that Instagram model when they do a prep, and we'll see what's left behind after their prep is done and dusted. Because you'll find that they'll be pleasantly surprised or unpleasantly surprised when they jump on stage and the glute gains they thought they had in the off season and they were showing off in the off season just aren't there, because that's where their body fat was held, and that's where it's coming off from. So I think, like all of us, we're all going to talk about training, and if you're training that area effectively and you're seeing progress from you're getting stronger, your reps are increasing, your weight is increasing, that's going to be your biggest biggest point of judgment over maybe what visibly is going on, because as we say, in the off season, you're going to be increasing the calories, you're going to be increasing the body weight's going to go up, the fat mass is going to go up, and if it's all going to your glutes, it may be hard to distinguish whether that's true glute gains or whether that's just fat deposit in that area.
Yeah, that's it.
What do you think, MG?
I think I wish I could deposit some body fat in my carbs. How do I make that happen? I swear to God, for me, man, the fat just stops at my waist. So It does not go past my waist. My legs stay pretty decent. Definitely doesn't go past my knee. I reckon I got a nutrient blocker or something at my knees, man. I'm sure of it.
Something so then you're okay, right? Because then you can see the true gains in your legs, right?
Oh, man, 100%. I've definitely, obviously I put on a little bit of weight now. My calves are, definitely the best they've ever been. And I can see it because there's no fat on. None.
Yeah.
They have not changed since prep my calves. Quad's taken a little bit of fat. Hammies definitely. Still got some really, really nice lines and detail in my side post. But, I can see every bit of gain I've made in my calf, man. Whereas my chest and my midsection, which is where I distribute a lot of my fat, my back, I take a lot of my back. I definitely feel like I'm bigger. Everything's fitting differently. My strength's the highest it's ever been. So I know I'm making improvements, but I can't see those improvements.
So that's a good point. So chest is one of the things that you're trying to grow, right?
For sure.
But it's also where you hold some body fat.
For sure.
So how would you go about tracking whether you're making true gains there?
Oh man, I'm just making sure that I'm ticking the boxes with my nutrition and progressively overloading every single session, and not getting too caught up in the look of things at the moment, because my goal at the moment's not aesthetic base. It will get there when the time comes for comp. So it's got to separate yourself from the aesthetic for a little bit and just make sure that you're ticking your boxes every day, and the end result will be the accumulation of all of that, and a better looking physique and an improved chest. And we know that the volume that Scott's put in for me for my chest at the moment is appropriate to increase the size in that area. So it's just about, going through the motions, man, getting it done.
Are you doing 7 sets?
9. I'll do 9 sets of Smith press incline, 9 sets of cable flyers incline, 9 sets of cable flyers flat, 9 sets of cable flyers decline. Then I'll start my workout. That's my warm up. Then I'll start my workout.
And he does 9 push-ups at the conclusion of every workout just to solidify the pump.
No, the conclusion of every set.
Oh, sorry.
Man, yeah, every set, not every workout. That's all.
Bro, you're doing too much. I told you, just do it at the end of the workout.
Oh, sorry, man. I'm overdoing it by 8
sets. 54 sets, that's enough.
Okay, cool. Sorry, man. I thought it was.
What about you, Scotty? Where do you hold your body fat, and do you have to keep yourself in check of whether you're actually making gains in that area or not?
I do keep I know when I'm getting bigger and heavier, I get more puffed walking upstairs carrying children. So that's a proxy for me. But I actually probably hold a bit more in my glutes. So I'm probably a little bit like some of those females. I hold a little bit more junk there. I'm fortunate enough I don't tend to carry a lot of body composition through my midsection, but otherwise I think I probably distribute it pretty evenly across, like through my legs, through my shoulders and back. It's not just like, I wouldn't say it's deposited, it's just one area other than potentially my glutes, but it's also hard, like having now run this cleanup phase, I thought that I was just carrying quite a lot of fat there, but some of it obviously was, but there's also quite a lot of the improvement that I've made has actually been through my legs, lifting some of the numbers that I've been doing. So, but I think performance in the gym and like that is a really good proxy. So if a lot of your horizontal press, if it's chest related, so if your horizontal pressing movements are going up, and that you can see that, the circumference of your chest, like if you're using anthropometrics or using a tape measure to measure it, it looks bigger, then the chances are you're probably, even though you might be storing body composition there, but you've definitely added some contractile tissue. But for females, it's pretty easy to tell, like if they're put on, say, 8 or 9 kilos in their improvement season, if you're doing skin folds and their abdominals are within a certain range. Now, we don't take a skin fold on the glute, unfortunately, but you can tell, like you can even just tell if you've got a skin fold technician, you can touch a specific area and you can tell if it's adipose tissue or if it's a muscle belly, especially with the glute. If you've got someone to stand in a certain position and contract their glute, you could use a claw grip and be able to see how much of there is fat tissue. And this is why I think people just need to not pay attention to what you see on Instagram, because I don't know anyone that's put a bad photo up on Instagram to this day. But also a lot of females in a bikini, you can turn your glute to one side. MG, you're a goat at this, man. When you did that bikini posing, you sell it like no one else.
I did a glute photo this morning in that same pose, actually.
Yeah, and pop your glute. And they look like, oh my God, they're tiny. And because they've got some trunk rotation, it makes their waist look small, which also increases the look and the size of the glutes. Versus if you get them to just stand there and then just face from a posterior view, you can tell pretty quickly whether it is or it isn't honest tissue. So, but at the end of the day, this is why, like, we're all unique, we're all individual, we store composition differently. We lose composition differently at different rates as well. So I think at the end of the day, it's really irrelevant, because you have an off-season look and you have a competition look. If you hold more fat in your legs or in your bum when you're in your off-season, then so be it. At the end of the day, we've spoken about like just loving your body at whatever stage it's in and appreciating what it can do rather than what it looks. And I think, like what you said, MG, when you get to a point where you're eating a lot and you are quite heavy in the improvement season, you kind of just detach. Well, I think it's easier perhaps for guys, or at least I know I do, where it's not like when you're in prep, you wake up every day and you flex and see if you've got a new line in your abs or in your quads or in your glutes. You don't even look in the mirror. You're just a body. It's more you're thinking about what you're going to do in the gym that day. So it's funny how you go from that end where you just could care less. Not that you're letting yourself go, but you don't have any emphasis around that, rather than when you're in prep, you've got a specific emphasis because you're trying to look better. But I think that the easiest proxy is, you could go and get a scan if you wanted to, but I think if you're getting skin folds done, or if you're using anthropometrics, so tape measurements, and then just going by you or your coach's eye, at the end of the day, whether it's fat mass or whether it's not. And if you choose to upload it for validation, whatever, you do you.
Yeah. You just raised an awesome point, man, which is like, when you're in prep, you wake up and it's like new detail, new line. What can I see? And literally, man, now I'm waking up and it's like, what am I going to freaking lift today? Like, how much am I going to overload today? It really does. That's the mindset shift.
Yeah, and I think a point I was going to explain is, during prep, you see weekly visual changes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In off season, you don't.
Yeah.
And I don't know how often you ask for photos from clients in the off season, but it's infrequent. And
It is, man.
definitely not as frequent as comp prep, because you're just not going to see those visual changes that quick. Growth takes a lot longer than fat loss. And as I said, it's a mindset shift. It's looking at progress in other areas than physical progress on a weekly basis. It's progress in, your lifts on a weekly basis. It's progress in also your body weight. How is it trending, and also how your metabolism is trending by how much calories we're putting in and how much calories we can add in over time. So those are kind of things that we kind of track, and we look for progress in, then actual visible, getting weekly photos and seeing, can we see there's a bit more thickness there? Like, you're just not going to see it on a weekly basis. How often do you guys normally get someone to take a set of photos in their off season?
Just athlete dependent, man. No one weekly. Sometimes monthly. Sometimes even longer than that, man. Like, especially people, I do a lot of face-to-face with people where I see them at least once a week anyway. So if I'm training them one-on-one once a week, sometimes, man, every 2 months, like.
Yeah.
Just
maybe every new training program, every 8 weeks, every 2 months, or whenever you come into an end of a phase, or maybe when they hit a weight milestone, you might be like, well, let's see how you're checking at that body weight. That's kind of how I do it. I kind of just play it by feel, and it's definitely athlete dependent for sure.
Yeah, same as me, man.
Yeah. And then talking about, fat loss in the comp prep and then regaining the fat, do you guys ever see clients that distribute their fat differently?
For sure.
After the comp? So maybe
100%.
they normally have a lot of body fat in their lower half, on their legs, on their thighs. They lose it all for prep. And in the off-season, when they're gaining their weight back, it doesn't always go back to the area where they had it. Maybe it distributes differently. Do you ever find that?
Man, I'll say every time I've dieted down to a decent composition, my fat redistribution's been different every time. Every time.
What's different? What are you finding different?
So my legs continually stay leaner and leaner each dieting phase. I put a little bit less on my chest each time, whereas chest is normally my trouble spot, and I seem to be distributing more and more on my lower back.
Okay. Yeah. What about with clients, with females?
Same. Sometimes I see completely different, man. Like, we're different parts, like lower leg and upper back, tend to stay leaner. Like, I've got some females who just did their second show and their backs have stayed really, really lean this time around. And a lot more has gone straight to the glute this time.
Yeah.
Versus the last time. So I definitely think it changes all the time, man.
Yeah, I don't want to say it changes for everyone, but I definitely see it does change for clients where, maybe they're heavy through the thighs, through the lower glute, hamstring kind of trouble area. And then after a show, after they've lost it all, when they're regaining, it sometimes just distributes evenly over the whole body again and doesn't go back to that specific area. Sometimes I've seen it where it does go back to that specific area, and that's just the way it is for them.
Yeah.
How about
And a
you,
lot of it
Scotty?
can be around like the way that they respect the reverse diet too, right?
100%, 100%. If
So,
they're reversing correctly and body fat's coming on at a reasonable rate that we want to see, then yeah, I find that they're the ones that are going to get the better distribution for sure. How about you, Scotty? For yourself
Yeah.
or even for your clients?
Yeah, very similar. And I think as well, it also sometimes depends on the level of conditioning they've got down to. So perhaps if they've exceeded the conditioning they got to last time, then perhaps as they're coming out, their rate of gain versus how they look is different because they were leaner to finish up with this time than perhaps the first time around. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say like every 1 in 2, but the majority of them, they tend to, the way it comes off, it will come back on in similar places. But every now and then you see bespoke changes depending on the person. Like with females, like you said, sometimes it might be more will go toward the glute than perhaps to where the midsection was. It just depends because sometimes as well the way that like the prep can be life-changing for them in terms of this is how, granted I'm going to eat more of what I'm eating, but I don't want to, like I used to be all about trying to have a donut and have this versus now I'm going to eat differently. So I don't have as much inflammation through my gut. Perhaps my digestion's a lot better. I'm drinking more water now. So I just have a flatter stomach, whereas before I always looked puffy and bloated because I was always inflamed. So I think it's always, it's always individual person to person.
That's a good point is, prior to prep or, when they were in the off season, but maybe before they started with you, they had fluid retention and bloating in certain areas where it just will never go back there because they've improved their lifestyle and their eating habits.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. And also too is maybe prior to coming to you or prior to starting a fat loss phase, maybe hormonally they were in a different position. So where they gained all their body fat before they started with you, maybe they were on the pill or hormonally not in a good position, estrogen dominant, gained a lot of fat in their lower half. That's normally what happens. And then going into prep, coming out of prep, maybe they're in a better hormonal position, maybe they're not on the pill, whatever it may be. So their hormones are a little bit different. So therefore they're going to distribute fat a little bit differently too. So I've also found that for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome, boys. I've got no more questions. We covered some really, really good topics. And we had a little bit of fun at the start. I think we've got to get a suvo definitely into Scotty.
Yeah, let's see who's going to bring a gluten-free suvo on Sunday. I swear, if somebody brings a gluten-free suvo on Sunday, that'll be the best thing ever, man.
Or at least tells us where we can get a good one, a good gluten-free one for Scotty.
No, that's not that's not challenging. I want to.
Because are you still
bring down a spit and then all of a sudden you walk out of base water and someone
there's one in the tapo.
carving that shit off.
When does your cut end?
I think
Saturday night, actually. Beautiful.
Sunday at 10:59 a.m.
There you go. Beautiful.
Awesome.
No, I think I'll be wrapping up probably towards the end of the week. It's hard because part of me wants to push a little bit more. I just wanted to see even further but it's just not really necessary now. Like I've done what I've needed to do. So I'll see out the rest of the week and then commence the maintaining phase just in time to enjoy some Christmas. Not that I really need Christmas, but anyway.
So, we talk about photos. Have you taken a set of photos from when you started this phase to now?
You know what? I was hoping that I didn't get asked this question because we actually didn't. So when I'm in prep, it's such an effort because I wake up so much earlier. I've got to get Jen up early, get downstairs, especially with getting it's easy now because of daylight savings with light, but because Harvey wakes up so early now and he either wants to be in it or he's having a meal, it's been a little bit too hard. So I kind of just have got her to take a couple of pics and even in the gym with some of the boys, like if I'm in the session or afterwards, just getting their feedback. And I know that it's very, very different to what I looked like when I was a bit heavier. So it's actually kind of cool to pull back some of the layers and see kind of what has been built over the last couple of years. And this is why I truly believe that majority of that work was done when I was just so overeating and I was at my heaviest, but I was doing things that I haven't ever done before in the gym and just seeing that through. So just these last few weeks, everyone that has been, bridging the whole, I think I want to run a cleanup phase before summer. I'm like, just trust me, just keep going, because you're going to see the fruits of your labor, what you're doing right now, like the heart of where you're at. Like your perfect example, MG, where you are now. This is where you build new tissue. This is where it's done. Solidifying that space and being comfortable, being uncomfortable. That's what builds it. So yeah, it'll be exciting to go one step further next year and just get disgustingly shredded.
Can't wait, man. We'll be there.
Keen as, bro. Keen as. All right, boys.
Well, we'll see everyone Sunday.
Yeah, I'm going to see you Sunday.
Happy birthday to MT Friday. Slide into his DMs.
Yeah, is someone gonna? What's your favorite cake, bro? Just so in case someone wants to bring
souvlaki cake.
A suva with all the chips around the sides.
A suva cake, just loaded up. He doesn't do garlic sauce, guys. He does mayo, so no garlic sauce, please.
Yeah. My favorite type of cake. I'm more of a brownie kind of slice person.
Okay.
Yeah, brownie slice. Chocolate's always good. I don't mind a cheesecake. Like, I'm not super fussed, to be honest. I'm not super fussed.
Take notes. You've got brownies. What about cookies? You like cookies?
Yeah, cookies are okay, but I'm more of a brownie slice person. Chocolate, like the general stuff. Chocolate, peanut butter, like, that kind of stuff.
Or a chocolate peanut butter brownie.
Chocolate peanut butter brownie. That would be all right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Someone make a big unit chocolate peanut butter brownie cake.
Hell yeah.
In the shape of a fry pan.
With a suva on top.
Yeah, and we'll heat it up in my fry pan.
Can you bring your fry pan to Powerhouse?
No.
Just so people can take a photo with the fry pan. Come on.
Can you imagine what a prop that would be?
Bring it.
Really?
Yeah, bring it in your bag. Seriously, bring it in your bag. Bring the spatula too. I want to walk around with the spatula. Please.
I'll bring it.
So I can poke and prod like people's, like, when they're doing a lap pull down.
No. I'll bring it, but you can't. No, you can't break it. You can't use it. No, I need it.
Bring the spatula.
Don't fuck it up for me.
Just let me have the spatula. I deserve the spatula. Come on. You
can borrow it. But
let me borrow it.
I need it back.
Yeah, I'll give it back to you at the end of the session.
All right, cool.
All right, man, legend.
You're going to see how shit this spatula is. You're not going to.
I can't wait.
You're not going to believe that. You think to yourself, why hasn't he thrown this fucking thing out?
No, I bet it's fucking bottom of the barrel.
Just melt on the sides.
It is. It's fucked.
Can't wait.
It's so good.
All right, boys. Take care.
Right, boys.
Have a great week. Enjoy your time away, MT.
See ya.
Enjoy, bro. We'll speak to you.
Thanks.